up today, the row is intensifying over opposition lawmakers' decision to reject the appointment of President Park's new agriculture minister. Protesting the move, the ruling party is boycotting the annual parliamentary audit. A new location for the US missile defense system THAAD will be announced this week after much uproar over the military's original choice. Plus, with just over 24 hours to go before the most highly anticipated US presidential debate in history, the latest polls show Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are neck and neck. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, September 26th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, Korea's presidential office has officially rejected the National Assembly's proposal to dismiss Kim Jae-soo from the post of Agriculture Minister. Opposition lawmakers voted for the motion just a month after Kim was appointed, but the top office explained he has been cleared of all allegations in his confirmation hearing. The presidential office spokesman said the lawmakers didn't even consider the agriculture expert's ability to carry out the role of a cabinet minister. He added President Park's decision to reject the proposed dismissal also took into account the ruling party's request that she do so. On Saturday, the presidential office called the opposition party's actions regrettable. The first parliamentary audit of the 20th National Assembly is set to kick off in the coming hours, but the ruling party says its lawmakers aren't going to be there. The Sonuri party has vowed to sit out all parliamentary proceedings until National Assembly Speaker Jung Se-kyun steps down over the opposition party's decision Saturday to pass a motion to dismiss Agriculture Minister Kim Jae-soo. On Sunday evening, ruling party lawmakers reportedly discussed measures to sue the Speaker and force him to resign over the issue. Separate meetings scheduled for Monday morning among Supreme Council members, long-term lawmakers and proportional representatives have been cancelled as Sunday's meeting went late into the night. The parliamentary audit is scheduled to start without the ruling party at 9 a.m. Korea time, a little under 3 hours from now. With Korea's anti-graft law set to take effect on Wednesday, we're now seeing more of the fine print. On Sunday, the Foreign Ministry announced partial exemptions to the law's strict limits on accepting gifts and meals when it comes to official diplomatic activities. The reasons: for one, the Foreign Ministry says exceptions are necessary for effective diplomacy, but also the gifts and meals in question are paid for by foreign governments and international organizations with their own budgets. The ministry worked with the Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission to come up with specific guidelines to keep the new law from discouraging legitimate diplomatic activities. The so-called Kim Young-ran law prevents those working for the government, media and schools from accepting meals priced higher than $27, gifts worth more than about $45, or congratulatory and condolence money over $90. A new location for the THAAD missile defense system will likely be announced this week after much uproar over the military's original choice. And to further strengthen defenses against growing threats from North Korea, top officials from Seoul and Washington are expected to meet next month. Oh Si-young reports.
It's likely that a golf course in Seongju County will be chosen this week as the site for the US anti-missile battery intended to counter growing threats from North Korea. Local opposition to the original THAAD site led to the South Korean military agreeing to reconsider the location. A defense official said Sunday that the evaluation of 3 possible sites is almost complete, and the decision is expected to be announced later this week. The new location is widely speculated to be the Lotte Sky Hill Country Club, some 18 kilometers north of the Seongju County office and far from populated areas. However, if the golf resort is announced as a new site, it will likely be met with widespread protests from residents of nearby Kimcheon City. The US Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System is designed to take down incoming ballistic missiles, and from the southeastern county of Seongju, it could cover a range of 200 kilometers. To strengthen measures to counter the North's evolving nuclear and missile threats, South Korea and the United States defense and foreign ministers will convene in mid-October. According to a government source in Seoul, the two parties are expected to discuss Washington's extended deterrence policy. In other words, its commitment to mobilize all military capabilities, both nuclear and conventional. During the 2+2 meeting, the ministers are likely to put that pledge into a joint statement, as well as discuss stronger sanctions and countermeasures against the regime's continual provocations. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, in just 3 to 5 years' time, North Korea could have the technology to mount a nuclear warhead on a missile that could reach as far as Seattle on the US mainland. This is according to the former head of the CIA, Michael Hayden. In an interview with the Japanese daily, Hayden criticized US policies against Pyongyang, saying it's now impossible for the US and Japan to stop the regime and urged Washington to consider alternative plans. Hayden added the deployment of the US missile defense system THAAD in South Korea is a must to counter North Korea's provocations. Turning now to the latest on Hanjin Shipping, the world's 7th largest shipping company that's now under court receivership here in Korea. Hyundai Merchant Marine is planning to buy key assets of the troubled container carrier, a move by Hanjin's rival that is part of its own restructuring plan. Hwang Ho-jun reports.
Hyundai Merchant Marine, South Korea's #2 shipping company, started work on Sunday to acquire key assets belonging to Hanjin Shipping. The news comes less than a month after the world's 7th largest container carrier filed for court receivership. The acquisitions are also a part of restructuring at Hyundai Merchant Marine, which has its own debt problems and recently ceded control to its creditors, including the state-owned Korea Development Bank. The decision for HMM to take over Hanjin's assets is meant to minimize the global shock caused by Hanjin Shipping's downfall, especially for foreign exporters who have scrambled to rebook containers with other carriers ahead of the retail boom that accompanies the winter holidays, including Christmas. Hyundai Merchant Marine is receiving detailed consulting from third-party business firms in order to discern which of Hanjin's assets are healthy. Hanjin currently operates 97 container ships, 37 of which it owns, and the other 60 it's chartered. It's the chartered ships that Hyundai Merchant is looking at buying. They're relatively newer and in better shape. Specifically, it's eyeing the ships that handle routes between South Korea and the United States, which have been dominated by Hanjin. Hyundai Merchant Marine is expected to announce its asset buying plans in November after the business consulting process is over. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Shifting our focus now to the race for the White House, presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are neck and neck ahead of their first televised debate set for Monday night in New York. The latest national poll from ABC and the Washington Post show the Democratic nominee, Clinton, with a 2% lead over her Republican rival. That lead has narrowed considerably in recent weeks and is well within the poll's 4.5% margin of error. Now, Monday's debate is drawing comparisons to the Super Bowl or even the moon landing in terms of anticipation. Some 100 million people, including around 3/4 of registered voters, are expected to watch it. The debate, with no commercial interruptions, will be moderated by NBC anchor Lester Holt. Police in the United States have apprehended a suspect in Friday's shooting at a shopping mall in Washington state, in which 5 people were killed. Authorities identified the suspect as Arjan Cetin, a 20-year-old green card holder from Turkey. He was taken into custody on Saturday local time after police reviewed security camera footage and identified his car. Now, his motive is still unclear, but police are not ruling out links to terrorism. Meanwhile, 8 people were injured in a shooting in Baltimore on Saturday night local time. All the victims are expected to survive. The police called the attack a premeditated act of retaliatory violence in response to a shooting earlier this month that killed 1 person In roughly the same area, they are looking for 3 shooters who fled the scene. China's Air Force has conducted a large-scale drill in the Western Pacific region, passing through a strait between Japanese islands. China's state-backed Xinhua news agency reports that the Air Force's fleet contained more than 40 bombers and fighter jets, including H-6K bombers and Su-30 fighters. The fleet conducted reconnaissance and early warning, attacks on sea service targets and in-flight refueling to test the Air Force's fighting capacity on the high seas. The latest drill, the second of its kind this month, is seen as a show of force against Japan amid heightened territorial disputes in the South and East China Seas. More than 6 decades have passed since the Korean War ended in an armistice, but the remains of 12,000 soldiers killed in action are still, to this day, unaccounted for. It's a race against time for the South Korean military to find and return the remains of those brave heroes to their loved ones. Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
Soldiers cross the civilian control line into rough, mountainous terrain, where troops are busy excavating the remains of soldiers who died in the Korean War. They're focused on identifying them, but they also have to distinguish them from non-human material detected underground.
Human remains are different from things like tree roots in terms of weight, composition, and so on, so we're able to see them.
During the Korean War, there were countless frontline skirmishes in which the dead were unable to be recovered. To this day, the remains of 12,000 soldiers killed in action are still unaccounted for. Since March this year, the remains of 50 have been returned to their loved ones or descendants. Excavators also find many other objects, such as bullet-pierced military gear and trumpets used by Chinese soldiers.
The Chinese used these trumpets to confuse our troops both mentally and psychologically. They used to beat on drums and blow on trumpets while they attacked during the night.
The remains they find are sent to the military central identification laboratory for DNA testing to confirm their identity. But even with modern technology, there are over 9,000 remains still unidentified, as the military has DNA records for only 30% of the families. Time is of the essence, as the soldiers' direct family members are getting older. And as they pass on, so do hopes of identifying the dead. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, Britain is introducing new banknotes made of plastic. The material makes them strong enough to survive the washing machine and a lot harder to counterfeit. Our Park Se-young has the details.
These are Britain's new £5 notes. Instead of paper, they're printed on polymer, a thin, flexible plastic film. A crumpled bill becomes good as new after a couple of tugs, and attempts to tear the bill are unsuccessful. The bills can even be soaked in water as they're waterproof.
It's stronger than paper and can better withstand being repeatedly folded into wallets or scrunched up into pockets. Polymer notes can survive a splash of claret, a flick of cigar ash, a nip of a bulldog, and even a spin afterwards in the washing machine.
With their durability, polymer notes are considered more environmentally friendly than traditional paper bills. They're also more resistant to counterfeiting, as the see-through windows on the notes are difficult to replicate. The Bank of England is releasing 440 million of the new £5 notes to be followed in the next year by new £10 plastic bills. Plastic banknotes are already in use in countries including Australia and Canada. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Have a great day and a wonderful start to the week. And thank you, as always, for tuning in to our newscast. Our next bulletin is coming up at 10 a.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.